Rightio, everyone. Welcome to the Rewatch. Today we're going to be talking about Loki, Marvel's newest project, and today we're joined by Sam,
Hello.
other co-host, and we again have Millsy on.
Hello.
So, we're just going to run through basically a series overview and talk about what we liked and what we probably didn't like about the series.
Sam.
Why do you guys think I hate this show?
It's always like us against him.
Yeah, it's because of where you're sitting. It's like 2v1 all the time.
Anyways, we're just going to kick it off with like some general thoughts and maybe just go around the room and say a few things that we thought about the show. I just wanted to start off by comparing it to the other MCU projects. Now, in terms of MCU, they've released two other shows right now, which is WandaVision.
Well, live action shows.
Yeah. So WandaVision and The Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So I'll start with you, Sam. What did you think of Loki in comparison to the other two?
It's by far the best one. And it feels like Marvel was like, okay, let's do some tiny little character developments for Wanda. Let's do some tiny little character developments for Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And then for Loki, they were like, okay, let's just get this multiverse thing going. Mm-hmm. And I feel like they were more invested in, getting the multiverse going and, the implications of this show. Because Kevin Feige's come out and said, we don't want to make these shows too important because the general audience aren't going to watch them.
Yeah.
However, I feel like if you don't watch this, you might not be able to get... I feel like it's the most influential of the shows.
Yeah,
and I feel like it was also the best, the most entertaining for me.
We'll keep it spoiler free for now, and we'll let the viewers know when we go into spoiler range or territory. But I have to agree with you. I think there are some serious things that happen in the finale of this series that's affecting, the MCU as a whole. So it's kind of contradictory what he said there and then how he set up, the rest of...
But I will add that you said about character development with Loki. And I think he did, obviously, in the show, had a lot of character development, but I think it was more to catch up to his other variant of himself, because you remember in Infinity War, or Endgame, whichever one it was, can't remember, he sacrificed himself and he was a good Loki there. And at the start of the show, no one really, people liked him, but no one really liked his personality. He's built all up himself.
Yeah.
And then, it gets back to him being the same as the other one.
Yeah.
So, I don't think it's technically character development because we were already there.
Yeah.
Right.
It's just kind of filling in the space, right? It's just
getting our Loki back to where he was.
Yeah. Okay. I have to agree with that in a sense, but I think he's more of an anti-hero in this series. So much so that you kind of forget that he's like the bad guy.
Yeah.
Because he's still a bad guy.
He's not put that in the way of the show. Other people are the bad guy in the show.
And if you compare him to the original Avengers 2012, he's done some really bad stuff in that film. And then you compare him.
The only thing I think about is him drilling the random guy's eye or some shit. Remember that scene?
Yeah.
He's drilling someone's eye out.
And then you compare it to this.
It's 2 days later.
It's
it isn't that long ago, is it?
But anyway, we started talking about how it is in comparison to the other shows. So what are you guys thinking in comparison to WandaVision and Falcon?
Definitely the best. Definitely the best compared to other shows.
Yep.
WandaVision, not great at all.
Wasn't it
at all. Falcon and Winter Soldier, a bit better.
I think
they definitely progressed each time. They got better each time. And I'm definitely hopeful for the next TV show, live action. Because if they keep, on the same path.
Trajectory. Yeah.
I think it's good.
I think it is good. The next one coming out is actually What If, so it's an animated series.
Not too hyped about that one.
Sam said he's kind of excited for that.
That's the one I'm most looking forward to.
Why are you excited for that?
Because it forces them to be creative. They have to... It's stuff we haven't seen before. They get to do whatever they want in 20, 30 minutes. I'd much rather see that than what's, Yelena up to in the Hawkeye series or, whatever.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I just have to say that I think it's the best that they've released so far.
Yeah.
It had me excited each week, whereas, WandaVision, it was kind of I have to watch another episode.
Yeah.
This, I was
what's going to happen?
Yeah. I was as soon as it came out, I was on it, or if I got back from work, I was watching it straight away. So it definitely had me hooked. Do we like the series length in terms of the episode, how many there are, and the length of the episodes. I'll start with you.
I think I said in the last podcast with the Falcon and Winter Soldier, that show didn't overstay its welcome, and I think it's the same for Loki. It didn't overstay its welcome.
Yeah.
It wasn't too short. It told the story it needed to, to set up whatever, and then it left. And I think that's good. And they want to do a second season, which I'm not disappointed about.
Yeah.
Because I would want to see more, but I'm not feeling like I need to see more right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's where I'm at.
Sam?
Yeah, look, I binged this. Like, I didn't watch this week to week, like I think you two did.
Yeah.
How quickly did you binge this? Was it?
I watched the first episode when it first came out, and then I thought, I'm not doing this again. I'm not waiting for this every week, because it wasn't, the first episode, in my opinion, is the worst episode by far, just because, I won't get into it, but yeah, so I was like, no, I'm not watching this. And so I didn't watch it for like 3 or 4 weeks, and then episode 2, 3, 4 come out. And then so I went back to watch the second one, and I'm like, yeah, it's okay. Let me just watch the third one. By the third one, I was hooked. Like, I was just going through. I watched it all in one sitting from the second onwards, just throughout the entire night.
That's dedication.
And you know what? I think that's the best way to watch this, because I feel like the week-to-week speculation that Marvel fans do is completely it derails the story, because...
Especially in WandaVision.
Yes, because the fans create hypothetical stories that are better than what we actually get. Right? But in this, I was just like, oh, that was fun. Like, let's see what happens next. Like, I was actually drawn in. Like, I wasn't drawn in with the other ones. It was sort of like an obligation.
Yeah.
I have to watch this because, Falcon's going to show up as Captain America in the next movie, and, I got to see him become Captain America.
Yeah, yeah.
So, yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I think the 6 episodes were good. Maybe it was even, like, drawn out at some stages. I feel like a lot of the talking was, a bit maybe unnecessary. They do hit the same beats again and again. And some people have criticised that. But, yeah, I think 6 episodes was good.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. I think the shorter length sort of suits the series more. And for the MCU, I've always kind of said that they should probably stick to a 1-season program. And that's mainly because I want to see the MCU keep on progressing.
You don't want to be stuck in one place.
I don't want to be stuck on one TV show. I definitely don't want to see a second season of WandaVision.
What could they do? There's literally
no idea. And it kind of comes down to the point where you have to watch it to be kept up with the MCU. And I typically don't really want to do that.
Yeah.
But as for that, I'll watch series 2 of this if it comes out, which it has been announced. So yeah, I'm overall pretty satisfied with the length of the series. Now we're going to reach spoiler territory here, because we're going to start talking about some characters, and obviously some of them haven't been shown in promotional material and in the posters and everything. So we're going to reach spoiler territory here. So if you haven't seen the series, click off now. Watch it like Sam.
Just quickly, should we recommend the series to people who?
Yeah, we'll do that. Yep.
Yes. I recommend.
So that's a yes from all of us. Yeah, so go watch it, binge it like Sam did, and then come back and...
It's a good time, actually. I should recommend it. Honestly, I think I might do this for the rest of them.
The rest of them?
Yeah. So I just get tired of this week-to-week
I think
anticipation.
The Bad Batch is really getting to me now. I haven't watched
it the past like 4.
Yeah, because apparently... You watch Star Wars Theory, don't you?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. He did like a breakdown on it, and in the thumbnail and in the title, he was like, the worst episode yet. And I was like, I'm not watching this. I'll just wait.
Yeah.
So yeah, click off, come back, and we'll talk about it. So, just going through some of the characters. Obviously, we'll start with Loki. What do we think about Loki's character development in this series, Sam?
Character development, but yeah, I agree with what Millsy said just then. Like, we sort of got a reverse of the character development, because this is the Loki that is from 2012 Avengers.
Yep.
So we sped him up a bit by making him watch the entire MCU.
Yeah. He binged himself. Yeah.
It's cool that Owen Wilson, obviously has the 4K collection of the MCU just ready to go. But yeah, so I think, we obviously sped him along to where he is at the end of Thor Ragnarok, which is sort of like we like Loki sort of thing.
Everyone kind of likes Loki.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think the character development was more of just getting him back to that stage, and then the rest was sort of just plot, which wasn't, necessarily a problem. And I think more emphasis was given onto the other character in the series. But what were your thoughts, guys, on Loki?
Yeah, I think Loki's always been probably one of the standouts in the MCU for me. I actually really like Tom Hiddleston as an actor.
Yeah.
And he's, it's kind of become a joke at this point where it's like, oh, Loki's dead, they're going to bring him back somehow. But honestly, I don't really mind that. Continuing
They
to
can
keep
get
him
away
around.
with it with Loki, I think.
Yeah,
They can sort of
yeah.
get
Well, I
away
mean, they
with it.
use that as a whole
It's
character
like a plot
beat.
point.
It's like a
Yeah, and I mean, his name is the God of Mischief, so
yeah.
it's expected from him. And if they continue to bring him back, I'm well and truly on board with that because I really like his character and I think he's probably one of, if not the most interesting villain / anti-hero that we have in the MCU.
Yeah.
I would hesitate to call him a villain anymore. I just think he's a normal character.
Yeah.
Anyway, Millsy, how do you like Loki?
Yeah, he's definitely up there in character ratings. Like a lot of the other ones are just all hero.
This
Like-
is the coolest character of a show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because people like Captain America, like he's a good character, but like, bro, like go eat a cheeseburger or something. Like, do some like smoke a cigarette or some shit, bro. Like, do some. Like, is all you do throw shields and like far out. Like with Loki, he's like, he's
got two sides.
He's
to
good,
him.
he's a bit more interesting. He's got more things to him.
Yeah, no, that's good. So obviously the next character I want to touch on is Sylvie or Lady Loki.
Hey,
A
baddie,
baddie?
yes,
baddie. Certified baddie, yes.
Yeah.
I'll just start off by kicking it off and saying that I actually really liked Sophia DiMartino in this series. I
Yeah,
think she did a really good job. And it's how you execute like a female character. You don't just drown them in like feminism. This is how you
They
do
did
it.
at the start.
At the start,
when
maybe.
did they do it at the start?
Okay, so look, I have a problem with this in terms of every Marvel film so far, right? They keep doing this. Marvel did this recently with Black Widow. It's like this huge thing. They're
Yeah,
like,
I think I know what you're gonna say.
who's this masked hero? Oh my gosh, who's it going to be? Oh my god, it's a woman. Oh, mind blown. It's like, no, it's a woman. Like,
I think
it
they
doesn't-
set it up to be something big, but it shouldn't be. Like it
yeah.
I didn't see it as them
They were
setting up like.
constantly referenced to as a he, like a hooded figure, menacing, like, superior Loki, he's better than you, Loki. And then like, you have the shot where it's like a hooded figure and then it like draws in, it's like for a big reveal and then takes it off and it's a woman and we're supposed to go like, oh, my mind is blown. It's like, no, it's a woman. Like we see superhero females all the time. It doesn't really matter.
I didn't really find that particularly annoying as opposed to
I
like
didn't know.
No, I did.
the Black Widow reveal. Really
No, I thought it was in a similar vein to that.
Um,
Obviously, that's a bit more.
The Black Widow reveal, that pissed me off a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A little bit, but obviously we won't go into that because that's different spoilers for a different movie. But
I think the Sylvie was done really well throughout the show. Excited to see where she stands in the future of the MCU. I think Sophia DiMartino was great in the show. Yeah.
What are your thoughts, Alex, on Sylvie?
yeah, honestly, I found it a little bit weird that her and Loki were kind of a
What
but
is
that's on brand with especially with Loki because in Norse mythology, he's
Get
Loki
into it,
is-
bro. Get into
Okay,
it.
shall I
Yeah.
get into it?
Get into it.
Norse mythology, he's the first ever kind of gender fluid. Is that what they call it? Yeah, gender
Yeah,
fluid.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
both guy and
Yeah,
girl.
yeah.
Like he goes and horses. He's
Yep.
having sex with all these different things.
Yep.
And they do mention it in him. Okay, well this part they mention it him being bisexual in the show.
Yeah.
And some people think it was like a big thing.
Yeah.
I think you, Jane,
I
commented
think I
on it.
remember messaging you.
Yeah,
about
it was
this.
like-
yeah.
Is it that big? I'm like, no, it's not that big at all. They say one comment about it, and I think they did it well because it's representation of him as an actual character, because he's in the comics,
Yep.
he's like that as well,
Yep.
not in just Norse mythology.
Mm.
They didn't linger on it like, whoa,
big
it's such
thing.
a big deal,
Yeah.
he's bi,
Yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I think they did a good job this time.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
I remember messaging you the first time about it, and I expressed my my thoughts on it.
Jane's not a homophobe, by the
Yeah,
way.
Yeah,
I
by
was
the
gonna
way,
say.
let me say that right. No, I think I didn't really know the character and his backstory in that sense.
Yeah.
But now that you've enlightened me about his comic accuracy,
Yeah.
I don't mind that they mentioned it. They could have gotten away with not mentioning it, but it doesn't really detract from
No,
his
it doesn't.
character.
But yeah, back to what we were saying about Sylvie. I think it's a little bit weird that they had a love
Yeah,
thing, but like,
because technically she's him, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Just
just
like
a
an
different version of
alternate
him.
universe.
But
But then that
Yeah.
also is very on brand.
Yeah,
for
it's
Loki.
on brand for Loki.
Like, he loves
And
himself.
when I watched the scene with my girlfriend where they kissed at the
Yeah.
end,
Yeah.
we both like started cheering like, yes, finally they kiss. So I think it's a good character. I like it. I like it.
The relationship definitely worked. Like
Yeah.
the MCU sometimes doesn't really nail the actual, the male and the female relationships.
Yeah.
Perhaps we sort of got it with Wanda and Vision, but like I feel like this was probably done even better, and they did it in like 3 or 4 episodes, whereas Wanda and Vision sort of had the Civil War and Infinity War sort of like lead
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So I think this is probably the best relationship in the MCU. I think.
Whoa,
I'd have to disagree with that big
that's
time.
What
I'd
else?
probably say Tony Stark and Pepper Potts is
Right.
Really?
well and truly
Right.
up there. I think
Okay.
their chemistry is really
What
good.
do you think, Alex?
I was thinking more. I was thinking it's the best like chemistry because they did it well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But like, I did just bag on Captain America, but him and Pepper, what's her
Peggy.
name?
Black
Peggy
Widow.
Peggy Carter.
Right.
I think they did a right job with like
Yeah.
giving him the payoff in
Oh,
the
I
end.
I have
and
to agree with that.
over the
as well.
several movies he had, they always mention him and like
Yeah.
mention them together.
I think
Nice.
Peggy and Cap and Tony and Pepper Potts feel really natural on screen, and we haven't had enough time with Loki and Sylvie yet to kind of
Okay.
develop
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's been developed the most, like the best way, if you know
Yeah,
what I mean.
Oh,
in
fair
a
enough.
really
Yeah.
short time,
Yeah,
they've done
yeah.
a lot.
They did well.
Yeah.
Like it didn't feel, because a lot of the times when they kiss, I'm like, oh no, you probably shouldn't have kissed. You probably should have just hugged or something. Like that's a bit too like.
Yeah.
But this kind of works, even though the show is literally set over a number of days. Like it's literally like the show is probably like 3 or 4 days
Yeah.
long in terms of the chronological order. But I didn't feel like when they kissed, I was cheering. I was
Yeah.
like, well, not really, but I was like, I wasn't not offended.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wasn't offended.
So probably the next person that shares the most screen time is Mobius,
Oh,
Owen Wilson.
Wow.
Wow. I'm severely depressed.
oh,
Honestly,
I'm so sad.
Kate Herron, you had one job.
I know. So disappointing.
I'm
man.
so sad.
disappointing. They could have even
Wow.
ad-libbed it in at the end if they hadn't originally planned for it. But she specifically went out of her way to make sure it wasn't in the show.
Yeah.
It's like, come on.
Well, I mean, but yeah, Mobius, I love him. Love him as a character. He did
Yeah.
exactly what I wanted a Mobius character to do.
Mm-hmm.
And the relationship him and Loki had,
Yep.
I think was definitely one of the best of the show because it was built well.
Yeah.
Like at the start, they both hated each other, but they both saw something in each other. That could they help one another.
It's very similar to Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Really. How they kind of start off like nemesises and then they kind of gradually build this friendship. But I mean, Owen Wilson's such a good actor, and I think anything that he would have been given in this show just would have turned out great.
Yeah.
With what he was given, he did a lot, so I think he was great.
Yeah, I think with his sort of character, if it wasn't Owen Wilson, it would have been such a boring character.
Yeah.
This is literally a walking exposition machine. His only sort of objective is to
Be the audience.
And get the plot moving.
Yeah.
Tell Loki what to do and give him assignments and all of that. And if it wasn't Owen Wilson and the charisma that he has as an actor, I feel like it would have been an incredibly boring character. And let's hope he gets a jet ski in the next season, right?
Oh, it was so sad at the end when he said to Loki, he's like, "Who are you?"
Yeah.
Bro, no,
Yeah,
the first
yeah.
friend that Loki ever has.
Yeah.
Oh.
It felt bad, right? Yeah. So Renslayer. Now, if you don't know who Renslayer is, because the name might sound a bit foreign, it's the chick that essentially runs the TVA, the judge.
Isn't
person.
she one of the judges? I don't think
She's
ran
one of
it.
/run.
Yeah,
Judge,
she's a
whatever
judge
she
at
was.
one stage
Yeah.
at the very start. I think.
There's very little to touch on her, but again,
She was pretty pretty bland.
I think she was a bit bland, but it's not necessarily bad. I think, with what the material she had,
which is pretty crap material, I will say. Like,
yeah,
it's pretty terrible.
She's kind of set up to be, spoiler alert, Kang's love interest.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And I feel like that wasn't explored enough, and they'll probably do that in season 2. So I think she's going to be a bigger part of season 2.
She goes off into the
I think she was more used as here's a character. Don't think about her right now, but like in a few years' time, oh, here she is again. She's done all this stuff, and we'll go over that.
It's the classic MCU stuff where they like plant something in a film like 5 years,
like they did with Thanos in the first Avengers movie.
They've probably already done it for like Far From No Way Home. So they like plant it like 5 years in the past, and in the future they're like, hey, remember this?
Yeah,
this is what we touched on. It's coming up now.
Right.
It's probably the least interesting character.
Yeah, she was a bit boring.
Not really the best. On the other hand, let's talk about Kang / He Who Remains. So
because he's actually not referred to as Kang, is he?
No.
Well, I think
not in the show.
He talks about like his variants.
He's like Kang.
He says Conqueror.
He says
I've been
Conqueror.
called Conqueror, and like obviously the comics, like it's pretty much like it is Kang, but he's only like credited as He Who Remains.
Yeah.
I think it's because that guy is He Who Remains, but the other people,
he's the variants
of Kang or whatever.
Yeah. Okay. What do we think about that?
Now, are we talking about his appearance in his final episode, or just him as a character in general?
Let's talk about his appearance in the final episode, and then where you think it's going to go in terms of the future. Yeah.
Now, I think you guys mentioned that there was too much dialogue in the show, and this last episode definitely enforces that. There's a lot of
exposition into it. Yeah.
But I actually enjoyed it because, as if you've heard me on the other podcasts, my Marvel action rating is terrible. Like I hate the action in Marvel movies. Cut. But they did a good job because I didn't want a big fight at the end with CGI Loki throwing a bunch of magic and Kang dodging everything. Yeah. I wanted to know what happened, why he was there, what his purpose is for the next few movies and stuff. I think they did a good job. And what's his name? Jonathan Majors? Something?
Jonathan,
the actor?
Majors, I think. Yeah.
He is a good actor. I liked him as Kang. He did a really good job, and I liked how he played it, and I'm excited to see where he goes. For the other variants.
Yeah.
In terms of He Who Remains, I think like the performance that he gave there, I didn't find very like intimidating or terrifying. Loki comes out of at the end, he comes out to talk to Mobius, and he's like, "Oh, he's here. He's terrifying." I'm like, "Wait, is he?" Like, I know that he's sort of like he's got control of everything, and that in itself is terrifying. But the guy's like, it reminded me a bit of Jamie Foxx's Electro before he becomes Electro.
You always find a way to bring it back to the Amazing Spider-Man. How do you do it?
No, it was sort of just like this, like larger than life, like almost like nerdy sort of performance. Like, do you get what I mean? Like, he wasn't. Like, he didn't come in with, like, that Thanos energy of, like, oh, I'm a big bad. Like, he sort of tried to do the opposite, which is, like, I'm this, like, flamboyant sort of guy. And, like, I think, it was fine in this, but I'm hoping, like, obviously, and I think this will be the case, like, his variants will have sort of different personalities.
I think that's the whole point of him being at the end, because he's the most powerful version. Like, he doesn't care. He doesn't care about being threatening or anything. He's lived all these lives. He just wants to die. Basically, in the show, he just wants to die. So I think that was the whole, what he was given, to be non-threatening and...
Right, okay.
But that's why he was so scared of his other variants. Because he knows what he can be. But he's not that. I think that's...
I think that's how it was set up as. I mean, he's not a replacement of Thanos.
No, I don't want him to be. I want something new. But I still want, like... I think it will be the case that, the other variants, like... One of them's gonna, become the most powerful. Like we can't have like 25 Kangs as the main villain for the MCU. I think one's gonna come out as being, the big bad, and I feel like he will have, the more intimidating presence. I'm gonna because apparently he's going to show up in Ant-Man. Like, bro, I don't think Ant-Man can handle this thing. Like,
what's he going to do, bro? Like, shrink to nothing and then run?
But yeah, I think he will come in with like that intimidating presence, and then that'll make us like literally terrified. But when Loki was like, oh, he's terrifying, I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. But
yeah,
obviously what he's done is pretty terrifying.
Yeah. I think the character is definitely, He Who Remains in the comics is more of like he's like an old dude. So he's definitely not, terrifying. But I first expressed, I can't remember if it was to you or to Sam, where I was like, oh, I don't really like his portrayal. It felt like a bit nerdy. But now that I'm thinking about it, it may have been because I watched the final episode on my TV, so the dialogue I couldn't like completely hear it. Because if you have headphones in, you can hear the dialogue a lot better. So it might have been that like his lisp was a bit too like.
He had a lisp.
He had something like that. It was a bit like blurred dialogue. But I think I've had a problem with the dialogue in this show and many of the other MCU projects. But I think his performance in particular is pretty good, and I'm excited to see what he can do with his other variants and how he can kind of flip his performance and do both sides of it, because obviously actors need to know how to portray different characters and do that. So I'm pretty excited to see him be this like big bad dude in the MCU, and I think he's gonna do a pretty good job. So the last sort of group, I just want to group all these people together that I want to talk about is the Loki variants, and I'm specifically talking about Kid Loki, classic Loki, boastful Loki, and then our favourite, Alligator Loki.
Honestly, stole the show. Stole the absolute show.
Yeah.
And can I just say, like, I love this. Every time, like, they were having a conversation, like, Loki would say something, like, our Loki would say something. And then the camera would go for reaction shots. And then every time the camera goes to the alligator, and like it's an alligator, like it has the same expression the entire time, but it kept on going back to that alligator for a reaction, and it just never got the reaction. But it was just so funny.
And then the other Lokis would react like, "Oh, that's true, alligator Loki." Like that. It was so
sort of like an I Am Groot situation. He'd like make some sort of grunt, and then they'd like
they'd translate for him.
Yeah, I feel like Marvel was getting more confident with bringing in these sort of unique characters. They did the same thing with like Throg, even though it's like a really small
2 second
Easter egg. It's cool that they're putting these things in from the comics. 10 years ago they would have been like, okay, Nick Fury's the most daring thing we're going to do. Not a lot of people know him, but we're going to put him in anyway and see how it goes. Whereas now they're just doing like full on like
well, they got that to that stage now. They can do it.
It's cool that they can do that, and obviously MCU's bigger now, so they're going to have more people watching it, and there's going to be fans of the comics in there, so they'll be able to appreciate all these little nuances and stuff. But what do we think about these Loki variants overall, Sam?
Oh, okay. I liked Alligator Loki the most, obviously, just because he was bloody hilarious. I liked classic Loki a lot too. I think the performance from
Richard E. Grant.
Yes. He was actually in Rise of Skywalker.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of...
Was he?
Yeah, he was
like
one of
some
the...
generic general.
Yeah, he like came in to like take over from General Hux.
And they like set him up as being like a really big character in the Rise of Skywalker, and then just had like the most minuscule role.
Yeah. He kills General Hux. He shoots him.
Right.
Whatever. But yeah, I think he was cool. I think he definitely stole the show. And in terms of the other two, they really were quite insignificant. And yeah, I enjoyed the classic costume. I think that's very comic accurate. But I don't really read the comics, so I probably don't appreciate that as much as most people. But yeah, those two were my favourite. That episode was one of the stronger ones, I think, in my opinion. The fifth one.
Yeah. Fifth or fourth. I think it was fourth was my favourite.
One of the strongest. I think the fifth one with the Lokis was pretty strong.
You go on. No, you go on.
What I did find a little bit weird was, which I now am more clarified about, is how Kid Loki was like the king and of the whole of the little band there. And classic Loki was giving him so much respect. I found that real weird, but then I saw like the director came out and said that Kid Loki had been there for thousands of years. He'd been pruned like thousands of years earlier. And he'd been living in the void for so long.
Okay.
And that's why classic Loki, And I feel like, okay, that's alright, but...
That makes sense now,
Yeah. And I liked his whole reveal of like he's like, what did you do to get pregnant? He's like, I killed Thor. It's like, whoa,
Yeah.
okay, whoa,
Yeah.
chill, like,
Right, yeah.
you're powerful, and we get it.
There was
Like,
cool backstories
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and then the other one's like, oh, instead of doing that stupid knife thing to try and kill Thanos, I actually did something more smart, and
created a whole illusion.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think I actually liked the whole aspect of having like different Loki variants. It's kind of what the show was set up to do, so it's good that they did it. If they hadn't done it, it would have been like, well, that's a bit of wasted opportunity. Again with you, I think Alligator Loki was fantastic. I mean, come on.
I want a series. I want a series. I want a series. I demand it.
It's just like a fan moment. It's like the same thing as Zemo like dancing in like the nightclub.
Yeah.
It's like it's cool. That
Marvel
they
are
do
very
that
good at
stuff.
that.
Yeah. And obviously, classic Loki, I think, was probably the other standout. Man, his performance was good, and he was given a lot of stuff to do with the character. He had a big part in episode 5, and it was good because if you're gonna hire Richard E. Grant, you got to do something with the character.
Yeah.
So that was good.
I did like it was pretty funny when all the variants of Lokis came along.
Yeah.
And they're like, I'm going to take the throne. Sorry, I'm going to take the throne. Sorry, I'm going to take the
Yeah.
throne. They all keep backstabbing each other.
Yeah.
And I liked how someone pointed out to me, do you remember in Thor Ragnarok where they did the get help thing? Where Thor throws Loki?
Yeah.
And they use alligator Loki in the get help
yeah,
thing. The kid
yeah,
Loki
they
throws
do,
the
they
alligator.
throw him.
Oh, right.
It's like all the variants know about get help because they've all been
Oh my
through
god,
it.
that's so true. They threw Loki
That's
in
great.
like-
I didn't
Three
catch that
alligator-
at all.
Yeah.
No, I
Oh,
didn't
that's
catch
so
that at all.
cool.
That was good.
That's a cool Easter egg.
Yeah.
What do you think about the visuals of the show in terms of the CGI and how it was edited? I think it has a lower budget. I think you said
Honestly, WandaVision had the highest budget by
Yeah.
far out of all of these shows.
I think
and
it
I'm
was
like,
250, wasn't it?
Million.
I think it was something like that.
Really?
Yeah, something along
Surely
Well,
those
shows
lines.
definitely cost way more than movies, but
Movies.
like,
oh, right, yeah, it's
I think it was 250 million, and then this is a hell of a lot less.
Honestly, I thought this looked better than
Yeah.
WandaVision.
Yeah, I think
best.
the visuals in this show, and even like Eliath or whatever his name was,
Yeah.
the big smoke thing, even that compared to like the finale of WandaVision is just like a big step up.
yeah.
Finale of WandaVision was just like terrible.
Yeah.
Bro, we keep bagging on this one show. What are you talking about?
You're doing Loki. Okay, what do we think about the visuals?
I think the visuals peaked in episode 3, I think, which is the one where they're on the planet that's about to
Lamentus?
get destroyed.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that looked really, really cool. Obviously, most of it is green screen, and sometimes it looked better than others. But there's this one like couple minutes in the show where there's no cuts; they just do a one shot, and I love that. Like they didn't have to do that, and it's very hard to just have the camera and do like a 2-minute sequence where the camera's just constantly rolling and they're just moving the camera. And I sort of watched it and I was like, hang on, was there any cuts there? And so I went back and I watched it again and I'm like, this is great. Like Falcon, Winter Soldier didn't do this, WandaVision didn't do this. They didn't have to do that, but it looked great and they got good CGI, very like nice purples and all of that. So
When you say with the long cut, I won't spoil it for you, but I watched a video on how they do long cuts and where they actually put cuts in.
oh well, I know. It's
Yeah, like
there's
they-
hidden cuts. There's
Yeah,
always
there's
cuts.
I've seen this as
hidden,
well.
there's
Yeah.
very hidden cuts, but once you
like
know
a
how to
person
look for
move
them,
across the
yeah,
screen.
yeah, it's like it kind of ruins it for me. So I'm like I did with the action
can
thing for you
notice it
guys.
now?
I notice it now, but it's
Yeah.
still like really cool that they
Yeah.
did that in the whole.
I think I watched a video on Kingsman, the church fight sequence, and where they like
Oh,
because
right.
that's
Yeah,
the
and
shot,
then- yeah.
and they show where they cut it.
That's the video. I
That's
was
the
talking.
video you
Yeah,
watch.
yeah.
Once you've seen it, it's like, now I know. But if you hadn't watched the video, it'd be like
You-
seamless.
yeah.
But like, I'd rather them do a fake long shot than
Yeah.
not.
Yeah, yeah.
Than just nothing.
Yeah,
Because I think I agree. Like the action is pretty subpar in this again, and there's not a lot of action.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I think that's fine. Like I don't need action every 10 minutes like there are in some of the other shows, like especially Falcon and Winter Soldier. And the talking was actually okay for me. Like I didn't mind it. But yeah, when they did go to an action scene, I was like, oh yeah, this is not too strong. But the one shot was really nice.
Yeah. Like I said, I think the visuals were probably the best out of the 3 shows. I think Falcon and the Winter Soldier felt a bit grey, and that's like a constant issue that the MCU just keeps on running into. It's like, They just drape the whole film.
Not as bad as
grey.
DC though.
No, I disagree.
Well, it
Really?
depends what DC films we're talking about.
I'm talking about Justice League.
Yeah,
Oh,
okay.
The whole movie I just saw grey.
Yeah, grey and orange. That was pretty
Yeah.
bad.
You mean Justice League?
Justice League?
Oh.
Moving away from DC. Moving away from DC. Sam's about to have like a fit. No, I think the CGI was pretty good. It's above standard for Marvel, I would say. And considering the budget, it's pretty impressive. Goliath, I think, was pretty cool. It's a cool concept. They executed that well. And even like the scenes, like you said, like on the Mentis, and then like the final sequence where they go into this sort of portal and they see like this watchtower and this like, what would you call it?
All of like the time things, you mean?
Well, no, it's like Kang's lair.
Yeah, right.
Oh, like the
Like
big
his
meteor
castle.
thing.
No, yeah, like his castle. Yeah, I think that was pretty cool looking as well. There's not much to fault with the visuals, but when you start comparing them to like films that are like solely based on visuals, like Arrival or something like that, then you start to realize, hey, this is just like pretty standard visuals.
But that's because they're doing these pretty quickly. Like, you know, a lot of the MCU projects are quite rushed. You know, if they did this show over 2 years, it could look like the best show we've ever seen. Like Marvel do have the potential to make something like that. And even, you know, when you watch films like Infinity War, it's still like, oh, you can tell they made this in a year. Like, because they really did. Like,
they know they can make more money if they just constantly.
Well, because they got to capitalize. You know, it's all about what's next with the MCU. You know, if it stops, if the train stops coming, then you know that's the whole thing. The whole thing is that, you know, there's different things every time. Like, you know, there's always something to look forward to.
I don't know if he told you this, but he like sent me like a meme where it was like this. You know the meme where the dude's like stepping over the stairs.
The big step.
It's like, okay, it's like what's next to the MCU, and it's like Black Widow. And then it like skips Loki, something. And it's like No Way Home. It's like, okay, what's next?
It's all about what's next.
I have to agree though that the MCU is pretty fast paced in terms of bringing out their projects.
Yeah.
I just wanted to touch on the dialogue because I have an actual issue with the dialogue in the series.
Yeah, go for it.
And it's probably my biggest negative from this, and I would say it's probably more apparent in this than anything else I've seen in the MCU. They just have these spurs of dialogue that just go on and on and on. And sometimes it feels like they just go on for like 10 minutes straight. Probably the one that I'll bring up is when they're sitting in this field, Sylvie and Loki, and they're like sitting down and they're like contemplating life, and like Loki somehow summons a blanket. That sequence there just felt like it kept going on and on and on. And it's not that I want to see action, I just want to see different sequences cutting in between and intertwining them. So I have a massive issue with that. And it's also very apparent in the final episode when they're talking to Kang. And I know it's a bit more hard there because it's like, well, what else could we cut to? Well, you could cut to the TVA with Owen Wilson and stuff, but that would
or give us flashbacks of Kang. You know, he's telling us his backstory.
Yeah,
give us the actual show us.
The frame just kept on like zooming in and out, and that's good. But the dialogue just kept going on and on. So that's like heavily impacted my rating on the series because sometimes I just felt like I was just tuning, sort of zoning out of the show, and I wasn't as immersed as I should have been. But did any of you guys feel that, or?
I didn't mind, as I said before, I didn't mind the dialogue at all because obviously I wanted to know about everything, because a lot of the shows that I watched, they set up all these things, they're like all these mysteries, and they never solve them.
Yeah.
They never tell us what's wrong, and I think I used that as a piggyback onto this show. Like, and if I did have a big action sequence at the end, and there was a cutscene of just Kang going, oh, I'm here now.
Yeah.
And I would be like, well, that was terrible. Like, what happens now? But so definitely like that scene you're talking about with the blanket, and then he puts the blanket on Sylvie, and that went a little bit long, but like I didn't mind it.
I sort of am in the same boat, but I think I'm sort of used to watching shows where the entire show is talking, like House of Cards, for example. But that's
Not a fan of that show.
that's like one of the best shows ever made. Like and it is all talking, but it's so interesting and so dramatic and everything like that. But yeah, in this, it just felt like they just extend a scene for five minutes too long.
Yeah.
But then again, a lot of when I was watching WandaVision, I'm sort of like, I'm not being told what's going on here. At least in this, I was being told.
Yeah.
You know, I felt like I was given enough information. Like,
you could follow it better.
well, yeah, but then also I don't feel like I was being strung along, like given a mystery box, you know? Like Falcon gets a box and he's like, oh, Sebastian Stan's like, oh, your suit's in here. Are we going to see the suit in the episode? No. But in this, it's like, okay, you know, who's Sylvie? In the episode where we see Sylvie, she explains who she is.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like, you know, it wasn't as frustrating as with the other episodes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I forgot to touch on this, but I just want to touch on like the concept of the show. And when it started off, I was pretty interested in it because it kind of dived into this whole mystery aspect, like solving these big mysteries in terms of our reality and what's going on. They dived into the whole DB Cooper thing. That was pretty cool. I thought that was pretty cool. And then they like went to Pompeii and everything. So all of those aspects of the show I really liked, and then it kind of just took a turn, and it wasn't a bad turn, but they kind of went away from that, and I'd like to see them do that in season 2 again, where they're solving these like mysteries of what's happened, because I thought that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I like that.
And then they kind of deviated from that, and they went like into different variants and stuff. It's not bad, but
they definitely could have lent into the sort of like the time traveling aspect a bit more. I think, you know, maybe you know, set the finale in, you know, a time that we know that's interesting.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So we've kind of touched on it, but I just wanted to talk about the future of the multiverse because they've clearly set it up in terms of Sylvie killing He Who Remains and then taking his spot. Or
was that the good thing to do, by the way? Do you guys agree with that decision that Sylvie made in that instance?
Well, obviously for the characters, no, it's terrible. But for us as the audience,
like,
we get more movies.
Right.
We get more. We get everything.
Yeah.
But like, no, it was a terrible decision. But you can't really fault her because she's been on the run for the same time that Loki's been alive, living his lavish life.
Yeah.
Like, all she knows is, I want to kill the TVA creator. I want to kill them. I want to kill that.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously she's going to think that the bloke is lying to her because why wouldn't he be? Why would he be telling the truth?
Yeah.
Like, these two just busted into his house and they're about to kill him. Why would he not lie to keep himself alive? Shut up. And then so, I don't fault her for doing it.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was definitely a bad decision.
I think in a way, it kind of tears up the character development of Sylvie because throughout the show, they were setting up how Sylvie and Loki are beginning to trust one another.
Yeah.
And
then they decide they don't trust each other at the end. I was like, hang on.
And it's a bit sort of demeaning in terms of her character development because she's set up to trust Loki, and then in the final minute, she like chucks him through this portal gate and just kind of gets rid of him. Obviously, it's setting up for a future season. But again, it probably could have worked just the same if they had like both killed He Who Remains and then sort of gone on from there. So it detracts from her character development a bit. And that's just another sort of negative I've thought of on the spot. It's nothing big, but it's something that probably could have been done a bit better. So to set up the multiverse, and I think this is going to have major effects on No Way Home and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, obviously.
Yeah.
Do we think there is going to be cameos from Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire in No Way Home? Is it entirely possible now? Because before we were kind of up in the air, you know, it's hadn't been established, but they've clearly established the multiverse now.
Well, I don't want to be like a party pooper, but Sony has a tight vice grip on the Spider-Man character, and they've only just kind of let him go to MCU.
Yeah.
So I highly doubt that. I'm not having my high hopes up. I'm not having hopes for these two to come in.
Yep.
If they do, brilliant.
Yep.
I'd love to see it.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't think it's gonna happen.
I'm kind of on the same boat as you. I definitely think they're eventually going to do it. It's just when are they going to do it? Tom Holland's been signed off for various projects in the MCU. I think he's got like another 3 films.
No, I feel like he's actually out of contract after this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but he'll get, he said himself, he actually said in an interview, if they want me to do 9 Spider-Man movies, I'll do it. I'm like, oh God, please no.
Please no.
Don't give us 9, Jesus.
Fast and Furious.
Yeah, look, I think it's entirely possible for the MCU. It just depends on when they're going to execute it. It could be a cameo at the end sequence.
Yeah, I feel like it's going to be if anything, I feel like it'll be a post-credit thing. Yeah. And by the way, if they're not in it, which is probably most likely, I feel like Marvel are going to seriously take a hit for that because they've sort of been stirring this sort of pot. They haven't come out and said, like, guys, seriously, they're not in it, and then given us evidence to suggest that they are actually not in it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's just their marketing team, capitalizing on
You've got a serious issue with the marketing team.
But it's them just capitalizing on this serious hype machine for these 2 Spider-Men, because, I mean, and honestly, fair enough, that we are marketing their movie for them with all these Spider-Man theory accounts and, all of the edits where, you have the poster and everything.
I mean, you can hate on it, but it's just smart marketing. Like
it is.
No, that's what I mean.
He hates them for being good at their job.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
I hate it because we're sort of part of it. Like we're all a part of it because we like to speculate and things like this, and that's exactly what they want us to do.
I'm more annoyed at like Paul Bettany's comment on.
Oh yeah.
WandaVision, if you don't know what we're talking about.
Oh, he's saying a big actor is going to...
It's like the biggest cameo since Luke Skywalker in The Mandalorian. That annoys me, but not really a silence in terms of the marketing team on No Way Home. That doesn't really annoy me. I would have preferred if they hadn't said anything, actually, so when I see the film for the first time, I know it's going to not be there, and then it surprises me. So, in a way, I kind of don't want them to spoil it and say they're coming.
But if they're not, there will be hell.
Yeah. What are we next excited for in the MCU?
Can I say something first? The music in this series is incredible.
I was going to get into that actually. Yeah, let's do the music first.
The MCU music is terrible. The only good song is the Avengers theme, and they use it over and over and over and over again.
Splice it for different characters.
It's like Russo brothers are like, okay, we got a good scene coming up. What do we use? Avengers theme.
Yeah.
Okay, next scene. What do we use? Avengers theme. And they just do that again and again. Like, okay, Thor's coming into Wakanda. What do we use? Avengers theme.
Yeah.
But in this, we get a Loki theme, and it's really cool. And it sort of embodies, like, it sounds like it's a Loki theme. It's not like you could just put this with Captain America or you could put this with Black Widow or whatever. Yeah. It wouldn't work. And please, MCU, please, for the love of God, next movie that Loki is in, if Loki's doing something cool, give us the Loki theme. Like, give us themes for these characters. Because this was really good. And I love the intro music, especially.
Oh, so in the last episode, where they, like, put in all the splices of, like, all the different movies and
that's like the
time.
Oh,
yep.
Yeah. No, I mean sort of like, when you have, like,
the flashing letters coming up.
Yeah.
Din, 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 din.
Yeah. No, I really liked it.
I really like the piano sort of theme where it's like the high notes. I think it's very suiting to Loki's character. Exactly. And it's kind of mysterious in a way.
Yeah.
Really good music used in the series.
Best part of the series, in my opinion.
The music?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's definitely up there for me.
It's the best MCU music since Avengers, I think.
Yeah, you tend to forget about the music in the MCU as opposed to like DCEU. DCEU has a lot more prominent themes in it, and it's probably one of the things that the DCEU does properly because they've got Hans Zimmer at the helm of it. I mean, if you got Hans Zimmer, there's no fault.
Yeah.
Do you love a bit of Hans Zimmer?
You love a bit of Hans Zimmer.
Wizard.
I don't know who particularly scored this, but whoever did, they did a great job with it.
Natalie Holt, there
you go. So I was just going to touch on what are we next excited for in the MCU, because the next project coming up is What If. You've expressed that you're not particularly excited for that. You've said you're pretty excited for that, but what's the next movie that we're excited for? The next one coming up is Shang-Chi, and then I think we've got what's the one after that?
Eternals.
Probably what they do not want to see.
Nope.
We haven't interfered until now.
Yeah, and then we're
go away.
And then we've got No Way Home, and then obviously from then on it's kind of up in the air what's coming next. I'm pretty excited for Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but that's coming out in like 2023.
Yeah, he hasn't even started working on that yet.
The Spider-Man films, although they're like cool in terms of the cameos they can bring in, they've kind of proven themselves to be not that good in the MCU. I know Far From Home for you and me wasn't that good.
Yeah.
Like, so I hope they step up the game for this one.
I mean, the past 2 movies we've gotten from the MCU are Black Widow and Far From Home, and those 2 movies are not good.
Yeah, that's true actually.
So they're not on a particularly good streak at the moment, and I think Shang-Chi will be fine. Like, I don't think it's going to be bad. It doesn't look terrible.
Yeah.
And I feel like they'll lean into more of the martial arts thing, and it'll be a good martial arts movie or whatever.
I'm worried about the action in that, man. Very, very nervous about.
Do you guys know anything what they do with the 10 rings in the Mandarin? Do you guys know anything about that?
I've heard about it.
Because I know a little bit about it from the comics, and it's just so different.
Yeah.
Like, so you guys know nothing?
No.
So in the comics, the 10 rings are like kind of like powered down Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
One thing does this, one thing does that. You know, you can shoot fire out of it, something like that.
Yeah.
In this one, they kind of just look like, I don't know, like
a
whip or something. Like bracelets
Yeah.
that when he uses them, they all come off his arm and he can like shoot them out. And it just looks like really bad.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I have to agree with that.
And I'm not going to like say it's terrible, the movie's terrible, because I haven't seen it.
Just based on
But
that,
they changed it out a little bit too much, I think.
And I think the main reason for doing that is because they've already had the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, it would be confusing to have these rings because they would confuse it with it.
Yeah.
So they kind of had to go a different direction. But again, it's just... it just looks weird.
It does look very weird.
Like, it's just a bit weird. But not to touch on that too much. Let's get into our final ratings and then we'll wrap up. And
I'm excited for the Hawkeye series.
Hawkeye series,
bro, bows and arrows, let's go!
Guess who's coming back?
I like
I do.
Hawkeye, guys. Like, he's my favorite character in Endgame. I like him.
Really?
I think they're good
Are you being
progression
serious?
in it.
I seriously, like, because he gets a lot of screen time in Endgame, like, with that opening sequence with his family. And
No, I have to agree with that. He's probably not my favourite, but I think he had good progression.
I really like Jeremy Renner, and I feel like he deserves his own movie. He's an action star. And, I watched a movie last night, an action movie with him in it, and he was really, really good. Also had Anthony Mackie in it as well, and he was playing a guy called Sam. It was a bit confusing.
That's good.
But yeah, so I think it's time for a Hawkeye movie.
Yeah.
Every Avengers gotten one except Hawkeye. So
True, that is very true.
Too.
Who's going for? Oh well, Mark Ruffalo hasn't got his Hulk film.
yeah, but got a Hulk. There's a Hulk film.
There's a whole film.
Yeah, but imagine if you were Mark Ruffalo, you could write your own film.
don't
It's
think
like
Mark
you claim Edward Norton's Hulk as your own.
Yeah, I don't think he deserves one.
Anyways, let's wrap up. Who wants to go first? Sam.
Okay. In terms of a letter rating?
Well, just do what we do at the end of the podcast.
Yeah, okay.
Give your letter rating and what you thought about it.
In terms of my letter ratings, if you want to get into the B category, it has to be something that I'm pretty eager to watch again. And am I sort of eager to watch this again? Not really, but maybe when season 2 comes out, I might go through and binge it again. But those talking scenes is not going to hold up as well. They're not going to be as interesting. So I'm sort of torn between B- and C+, but I'll go B- to be on the optimistic side for this one.
Yep.
I think I was saying this to Jaden before, but if I put it against other MCU titles and everything else, I'd like to rate it a B+. But like, as a show standalone, you compare it to something that not from the MCU, like so many better shows.
Like Daredevil?
Daredevil.
Oh my gosh.
So, like, it's definitely more on the C+, B- end.
Yeah.
So I think, to be fair, I'll give it a B.
Yeah. Fair enough. Yeah. Like we've said throughout this talk or whatever you would call it, I think Loki does a lot of stuff right, and it's a good point for the MCU. They've brought in new characters. They've developed Loki's character even more. If that was entirely possible, I didn't even know they could go any more with him. There's a lot of things right, like the music, the visuals are cool. But like you've both said, when you compare it to like actual projects, like other TV shows, it starts to fall down a bit. And it's probably because Marvel or the MCU is getting used to this new format of making TV shows. They're very new at it. So it's not the best, but it's up there with top MCU. I think it's one of their best.
Projects.
What was in properties or something?
not properties. It's definitely one of their best projects. And when I say best projects, it's like top 8 for me. Keeping in mind there's 23 films in the MCU, I think. 23 projects rather when you count WandaVision and Falcon and Winter Soldier.
And like half of them are bad.
It's a little bit more than half.
I'd say a bit more than half. Yeah. So I'll give it a B-, and that's gone down for me. I thought it was a B, but after this talk, I've kind of realised there's probably a bit more faults of it than I thought of.
Yeah.
So B- from me, B- from Millsy, and a B-.
No, I go B. I'm B.
You went B.
Yeah.
B-.
So average out to like a B- and a half.
What did you give it?
B-. Wait, is the half?
B- from you because you gave it a B.
Oh, okay.
So it's like B-.
In between a B and a B-.
Yeah.
But I feel like MCU fans will be happy with this.
Yeah. I think there's definitely it demands a watch from MCU viewers. If you like
what about that general audience though, guys? What about the person who's watched the Avengers movies but hasn't watched the other ones? Should they watch this?
Ooh, that's tricky.
Yeah.
Like just Avengers movies?
Well, because people have watched all sorts. Like someone might have gone to see Infinity War and Endgame and not the other ones because they're the biggest movies ever.
I don't know, because this show is more, as I said before, more of a catalyst to propel MCU this way.
Yeah.
And if they're just watching it as a casual, I don't think it's too necessary for them to watch it at all.
Yeah. No, I have to agree with that. I think the MCU kind of gets stuck on this idea of expanding their universe and then not making solo projects. If you watch this on your own, you'd be like wildly confused.
So what's happening?
If you're a casual viewer and you haven't seen any of the MCU stuff, you've only seen like
especially that first episode. Oh my God.
Or if you're just getting into it like with Black Widow, or if you've seen Avengers 10 years ago, probably don't watch it. It's not going to be your sort of film or series.
Right.
But it definitely, if you're an MCU fanatic, go ahead and watch it. You'll enjoy it.
Yeah.
All right, should we wrap it up?
Let's wrap it up. You do this. You're better than me.
All right. Well, thanks, Alex, for coming on.
Thank you for having me
Alex,
again.
You're sort of like our Marvel correspondent. We bring him in every time there's a Disney Plus show. We'll get you back for Hawkeye or something, whatever the next one is. Or maybe
sure.
What If. Maybe we
can do What If.
Yeah. That would be fine. But yeah, thank you very much for listening to this review of Loki. If you'd like to follow us on Instagram, you can do so at the Rewatch Pod. If you'd like to subscribe to the YouTube channel, just search the Rewatch on YouTube. We'll catch you next time for another podcast. And until then, it's bye for now.
See ya.